Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. It's brought to you by Pure Storage and Kasten. My name is Vaibhav Kamra. I'm the CTO here at Kasten, and I'll be the moderator today for this webinar. I'm really excited to introduce our guest speakers. We have from Pure Storage, John Owings, who is Principal Solution Architect at Pure. John's role at Pure has him spending a lot of time with customers building cloud native applications and infrastructure. He also shares his blog at 2vcps.io. I would highly encourage people to check that out. So really excited to have you here, John. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And from Kasten, we have Gaurav Rishi. He is head of product here at Kasten. Again, spending a lot of time with customers as they think about data management and day two operations for their Kubernetes infrastructure. So welcome both of you. I think it's going to be a great webinar. Thank you. The agenda here today, John, if you could switch to the next slide. The agenda here, Gaurav and John are going to walk us through the Pure and Kasten solution around Kubernetes storage and data management. We're going to make this very show and tell. So we actually have live demos where you'll actually get to see all of this in action. And then right at the end, we're going to wrap up with some Q&A. So if you have questions, please use the chat panel to add those. And I will curate those and share that with the speakers at the end. I think it'll be really fun.
I think, Weber, if they can use the Q&A button, it might be easier for us to also look at it as panelists as opposed to the chat window.
You're right. Thanks for that. So yes, please use the Q&A button, and that's what I'll use. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Gaurav. Gaurav, take it away, please.
Thank you, Weber. I'm super excited about this particular webinar. I think we had, John and I had done a blog together, so tremendous sort of interest in that. And we thought this would be a good idea to go ahead and take it to the next level and, do a show and tell, as Weber mentioned. So let me just dive right into it. So getting to what does a cloud native application look like? So if you kind of look at the figure, what we are trying to show is an X-ray of one of those. And this one, of course, is a toy application, but it's representative of what you might see an application blow up into microservices. And in this particular case, there are two microservices that we're showing. One's a stateful set and some pods connected to persistent volumes through PVCs, persistent volume claims. And there is a second microservice as a deployment connected to some sort of database. Now, the point being made out here is in the Kubernetes construct, as opposed to what you might have been used to in a hypervisor world, the unit of atomicity needs to change. So your operational unit now needs to be the application. It's no longer enough to be just looking at the database or just the volumes, because these are, first of all, extremely dynamic in this nature, and there are dependencies between these microservices. So to go ahead and capture and auto-discover these applications and treat them holistically turns out to be something that you need off the gates for any kind of Kubernetes native solution from a storage backup perspective. John, if you build the slide a little bit. The second point to make out here is when you do go ahead and back up this application with Kubernetes and cloud native, you want to make sure that you're actually going ahead and taking that particular backup in a way which abstracts you from the underlying infrastructure. This is important because in this dynamic environment, you also want to be able to go ahead and move your applications around. It could be to another cluster, to another availability zone or region, or maybe completely changing underlying storage infrastructures. In fact, we are going to show exactly that, and John's got an exciting demo ahead of us for that. And then finally, because you have this application with multiple microservices and lots of moving parts, multiple pods always getting rescheduled, when you go ahead and talk about taking a backup and then reinstantiating it or rehydrating it, you need to do both of these actions in a coordinated manner without actually making a change to the application. So this is kind of where the magic happens, if you will. between Pure and Kasten, and would love to sort of talk about that. So if you get to the next slide, John, let's try and introduce the building blocks to the solution. So let me take a step back on this one. I think Pure's always known to be at the forefront of innovation when it comes to storage. Pure introduced the flash array to provide highly available and easy to use all-flash storage for enterprises, for VDIs and VMs. Next, I think Pure introduced a flash blade to provide unprecedented scale with the same simplicity for unstructured workloads, both file and object. And then they introduced Cloud Block Store that provided industrial strength cloud block storage, but was delivered natively from the cloud. Now, while this innovation is happening on the storage side, there's a second dimension, and that's Kubernetes. And now what Kubernetes does is it redefines the way structured and unstructured data needs to be created, processed, and stored. And I kind of talked about how applications are different in the cloud native and Kubernetes construct in the previous slide. So what Pure Service Orchestrator does is equips us with effortless self-managed storage. So I think you see the tagline around container storage as a service. What that allows you to do really at the end of the day is you have, like I said, a rich set of underlying storage infrastructure spanning the arrays, blades, and Cloud Block Store. These of course span multiple locations, but PSO in turn goes and abstracts away what that underlying storage might be. So given the self-service capabilities, PSO allows us to go and do things like not only getting integrated directly into Kubernetes, but seamless multi-array scaling, or to be able to provision volumes extremely quickly. So that turns out to be a key component of the solution. And I just, there's a lot of literature around it, but I wanted to quickly introduce at least what PSO does and why it was created in the Kubernetes construct. If you build this slide, I'll go to the next slide, John. Let's talk about the Kasten side of it. So Kasten's core product is K10, and it's a wordplay. K10 sits on top of Kubernetes, which is abbreviated as K8. And so what K10 allows you to do is essentially, it's again a software product that sits in the same clusters that need to be protected. So that could be again on premises or in the cloud. And there are a few core capabilities it goes and provides the operations teams. One is as soon as you go ahead and install it, which itself is a very quick and easy process, it'll automatically go and discover all those applications and namespaces that I showed you in the very first slide. Once you've got those applications in there, you can also go ahead and define policies. What those policies allow you to do is actually set what the rules might be in terms of going ahead and getting compliance from a regulatory or from a backup perspective. How often should you take a backup? Where should they be sent out to for resiliency? And you can even have forward-looking policies. So for applications which haven't been discovered yet or are not in the system yet, you can even use labels so that when you go ahead and have an application instantiated on the cluster, it's automatically protected. So we'll show you some of that. And then security turns out to be something that spans, of course, everything. So this is again an example of sort of tight integration between both K10 itself, making sure we have encryption, for example, at rest, and in flight, employ the right policies on the PSO to the Pure underlying infrastructure. And at the end of the day, Kubernetes is 6 years old now, but it's still a new ecosystem, and it's extremely important to make sure that you are up and running and it's easy to go ahead and be backing up your applications. So ease of use and simplicity is something we take extremely seriously, and hopefully that's very visible to you when we get into some of the demos. So next. So what happens when you go ahead and take some of these two powerful, what we call best of breed solutions together? And this is now something where we believe you get the best of storage and data management capabilities, which span across backup, disaster recovery, as well as application mobility. Now, the two constituents that I want to talk about in terms of users is the solution is, of course, focused on the operations teams. And the Cloud Ops team is very important for them to go ahead and make sure that, hey, look, whatever applications are there are indeed protected. I am in compliance. If there is a problem, I have a very easy way to go back and choose the right restore point in a quick and resilient way. But at the same time, like I said, the cloud native applications, you don't want to touch them, but at the same time, you want to be dev friendly. And what I mean by that is essentially that when we talk about coordinated manner of going ahead and taking an application capture, you want to give extensible blueprints to the teams so that in case they want to go ahead and customize it, they can do that. And then as Kasten and Pure, we've already created a variety of blueprints which span the common data services, whether it's a Mongo or a Redis, etc., that you might encounter, but we'll continue to sort of empower the teams to also extend that. So let's move to the next slide and talk a little bit about what's happening under the covers with this integration. So if you look at it, and I'll try and, I know it's a little bit of a busy slide, but I'll try and make it easy. So like I said, K10 is the Kasten data management platform. It gets installed in its own namespace in the cluster, whether it's again on-premises or in the cloud, on top of most of the common Kubernetes distributions, whether it's AKS or EKS or plain vanilla Kubernetes or Red Hat OpenShift. And so the first type of integration, which we have pointed at number one, is we will go ahead and integrate with that underlying Kubernetes infrastructure, interrogate the Kubernetes API server, and we ourselves are a cloud native application. So that allows us to go ahead and make sure that not only are we going ahead and discovering the applications, we are also going ahead and building out the application dependency tree and truly instantiating and visualizing kind of the toy example I showed you in slide one of the various PVs, PVC claims, where are the data services and so on. And so keeping that application atomicity in mind. The second integration we have is from an infrastructure API perspective. This is where we've integrated with PSO, which then allows us to go ahead and make sure that we have all of the underlying Flash instantiations across arrays, blades, and CVS, something that gets abstracted away, but at the same time gets you the benefits of being able to go ahead and leverage things like snapshots or the resiliency that goes with it. And we'll of course talk about that a lot. And then the third one is actually at the data services or application level. And this is where I was talking about the extensible blueprints, where we also go ahead and without making or forcing people to make any changes to the applications, automatically go ahead and not only discover them, but also allow you to go and add any kind of extensions in terms of dependencies that you might want to introduce while taking an application captures like pre-hooks and post-hooks and so on. So that gives you the building blocks, but the net result, if you go to the next slide, John, is on one hand, PSO provides you, like we talked about, storage as a service with capabilities around smart provisioning and scaling. And on the other hand, K10 provides you a quick and easy, transparent way of doing application discovery with capturing and consistency levels that span across multiple layers, whether it's logical database dumps or whether it's at the storage snapshot level. But from a user's perspective, the benefits are tremendous. Not only do you get flexible storage that span locations, but you also get the core use cases of making sure data management, which equates to backup and quick recovery, disaster recovery across where you might have your target storage in a completely different domain, as well as application mobility, where you can go ahead and move between infrastructures and locations, and we'll get into that. So those are the benefits, and hopefully that gives you a taste of what the building blocks are before we dive into the show and tell. What I want to do next is maybe hand the slides over to John so he can talk a little more about the cloud block store, because some of the demonstrations we're going to show from an application mobility are also going to talk and showcase in the context of the pure cloud block storage, what are the benefits and how you can do it, the migration with K10. So John, can I hand it over to you now?
Yes, definitely. So thank you so much for having me on. And I just want to share a little bit about what we're going to see in the demo is Cloud Block Store, right? So to talk about it, we kind of just go a step back in history, right? Is Pure Storage created a all flash. It wasn't the very first all flash array. Other people had all flash array on-prem all flash devices. But what we did that was unique is that we wrote software that was able to really integrate with the hardware at any level. So if it's commercial grade flash and stuff that we don't even talk about anymore because nobody cares. But 10 years ago, people cared the difference between brands of flash and all that stuff. Well, fast forward to 2018, we took that software and we came out with a way to actually treat AWS as a hardware platform, much like we did with our physical controllers that were on-prem previously. So it's not just a VM that runs in the cloud, right? It actually integrates with AWS, and you see the Azure logo on the slide. It is in beta. That'll go GA. But today, if you want to use it, what we're going to see is all running in AWS. And it is 100% software, but it brings all of the efficiency and reliability that you used to get with the on-prem, or maybe you still can get. We still have them, the all flash arrays, right? So now you're able to use those APIs. The same REST API that we have on-prem can work in the cloud. And what that does is creates consistency between your data center and in the cloud for integrating with, in this case, Kubernetes. We're able to now take the same CSI plugin, Pure Service Orchestrator, and use it in the cloud. And that way there's no transition between on-prem and the cloud or back. Works the same, and the same data services are there as well. So we can actually see those benefits, right? Is now we're getting reliability and predictable performance across multiple devices. We're able to even do mirrored volumes across availability zones. So that active cluster is now able to make a volume writable in 2 AZs at the same exact time. So that's something that we're going to add to that. One of the big things, especially when it comes to when people ask, what is the budget? How much does it cost to do this? Is the thin, deduped, and compressed volumes in Cloud Block Store will enable you to take advantage of this at the same cost or less than just doing native EBS volumes. So that's really nice. And then you add on top of that the encryption that is always encrypted and the instant space-saving snapshots. And those snapshots is, part of the integration. So when K10 talks to PSO, it can actually manage those snapshots as well. So all that fits together very well and provides you with a better experience in the cloud. A little bit of details for everyone who is curious, right? So some people will go, well, how does it actually work, right? There is a dual controller system that are EC2 VMs that write to a instant store and is actually backed by S3 underneath, so that your data is highly durable, even if something bad happens in EBS. You will not lose your data. So that's very, very nice, and something that is a huge add to what you would just get with using plain EBS volume. So a little bit of that hopefully shows the reason why we want to migrate this application. So in this demo that I'm about to show, we're going to have an app. It's a Go app that's a web server. It ties to a MySQL database and with a PVC. We're going to have Kasten, K10, actually discover it, back it up to a object store. So it's going to back up to S3 because that's local. But if you're on-prem, this could actually be a FlashBlade or some on-prem object store. And then we're going to migrate. So I'd spent all the time making these transitions here, so I want the arrows to move. There we go. And so now, we're going to actually migrate over to Cloud Block Store. And we're going to do that with K10. You'll see how that works. And then you'll see that, in Kubernetes, the storage class will change from GP2 to Pure Block, right? So we'll see a little bit of that. And then obviously then the EBS volume can go away.
Okay, so this is a demo of Kasten, K10, and Pure Storage. So we're going to migrate data from one storage class, GP2, to a Pure Storage Cloud Block Store using PSO. So first we're going to deploy the application. You can see that happened up there into a namespace. And we're going to deploy a SQL database, MySQL database, and two web servers that will kind of run in front of it. And you can see that Kasten automatically picks up what's in that namespace. And if I put the correct command in, it works a lot better. There we go. And now we are going to make sure that it's running. So we're going to look at the UI of that web app. It's just a Go web app, and I'm going to create an account in this super easy to use platform here. Just all it is a note-taking app that I borrowed from someone else on the internet and customize a little bit. We can paste some data in there, and what this does is just puts data in the database. So, and everyone wants to make sure I'm not doing any tricks, so we did this on June 16th. Add a note, save it there. All right, so we have a couple of fields in the database ready to go. And we'll now create a policy to back it up. I'm going to enable backups via snapshot exports. What this will do is take the entire backup of everything in that namespace. That includes the metadata, the services, anything that is in that application, including the persistent volume claim and the persistent volume, and send it to that S3 target that I've given it. So I'm going to create policy. You can see it there. Since we don't want to wait, we're going to run it now. And we'll speed up time just a little bit. It takes like 3 minutes, which is just boring to watch in a demo. And you can see that the backup has happened. The pods are still running. And the storage class is still running on that GP2 Amazon storage class. So this is running in EKS inside of AWS. So we're using the managed Kubernetes with PSO and the built-in storage class for EBS. So we're going to migrate to Cloud Block Store using that export. So we're going to take that data from S3 and we're going to restore it right back on top of the existing application. And in order to do that, we're going to apply a transform, because if we just restored it, it would just kind of roll it back and it would put it back into the same place. We actually want to convert it to Cloud Block Store and PSO. So we're going to tell it, take that persistent volume claim, and instead of using what's in there, we're going to replace the storage class name. If I can spec storage class name, and we're going to tell it to use Pure Block. Add that operation, create the transform, and run the restore. So you can see all the parts of the spec there, a little bit of what it's going to restore. All right, so now it has started. We'll look at the dashboard, and we'll jump ahead in time a few minutes. It doesn't take hours, it just takes a couple minutes. And what you'll see here in a second is that storage class is now saying Pure Block, and Kasten is restoring that data into a new volume that is on the Cloud Block Store, successfully migrating it to there, and we can just refresh the app and data's still there. So we've migrated the application and only the storage.
To kind of summarize and kind of move on from that is that even though we're seeing a migration there from EBS to Cloud Block Store, this can be, in this world, right? That freedom of choice we could be moving from EKS to OpenShift. We can be moving from, EKS to AKS, right? So think about that for a second, between clouds, or even from the public cloud back on-prem if you're in a repatriation type of mode from your cloud journey. So I like to point that out. Obviously, I planned on talking about that in FlashBlade and FlashArray on this slide, but also, make sure that we're taking advantage of those canister plugins for your stateful sets and deployments, because it can make a big difference there in the reliability of the restore. So hopefully everybody saw that. And they have those already created and made for these applications, but also it provides a framework in order for you to create your own if you need to for something that's homegrown. Anything else to add on here?
No, I think you covered it. So you can span, like you said, with the Kubernetes distributions, both managed versions that you typically encounter in public clouds, but also on premises with things like VMware and the Tanzu family there. And then OpenShift itself, of course, is something that is available across a variety of different Kubernetes instantiations in both the public cloud and on premises. So that's important. And and I think this slide which you're bringing up is the other one I'll just maybe tee up, and John, you can add the details, which is getting that application mobility, which is not only moving it across environments, and I know you can talk more about that, but even sort of day-to-day going across availability zones and regions is an important one. And I think getting that hybrid and on-cloud becoming seamless is the other part where you could be moving within the Pure environment, right? Whether it's a Cloud Block Store or the FlashArray, and that's where Kasten, I think, turns out to be an interesting integration with PSO.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you said it. You said it all there. And the options are, when we talk about mobility, are going to open up even more. He says AWS on there. We will have Azure as a choice soon. So we'll be able to kind of have those data services across all those environments. Then finally, summarize. I mean, obviously, I think that K10 provides just a very easy, like we didn't show like how easy the Helm chart is to install to get that up and running. Amazingly simple and straightforward. I always skip over the end-to-end security part, like we pointed out earlier, is there is fine-grained control in what you can get there, and the migration application, for us, at least for Pure, selfishly, right, is migrating to Cloud Block Store or from the cloud back is just something that's going to open up so many opportunities for customers that may need to modify what they've been doing, and they may have started with Kubernetes a couple of years ago, and now they're moving more towards a managed way. If IT enterprise has gotten a hold of it, right, and they're like, hey, how do we provide the same enterprise level services in the cloud on-prem that we did for our traditional VMs and other applications? So we're really opening up that world there. And with that, is there any other Q&A or questions or chastisement for the failed demo?
There are definitely some questions. So let me just feed some of them to you. There are also some comments about the demo. I think people appreciate the live demo. So that's always fun. We covered the backup consistency question. This came up right as we were doing the demo. Gaurav, you took that. John, there's a question around, can you use K10 and PSO to migrate on-prem clusters?
Yes. Yeah. So let's say you have OpenShift and you want to move to, TKG or whatever, what VMware has, right? Absolutely, you can do that.
Okay. Gaurav, I think this one might be best fit for you. What changes are required to my applications if I want to move from EBS to CBS in this case?
Yeah, no, so I think we were trying to point that out, which is actually you don't need to go hunting around for who the developers are or make application changes. I think as John was showing, you have the transformations which get applied when the application is getting repaved in the new cluster. And that's where it becomes completely transparent as far as the application developers are concerned. So short answer is, no, you don't need any changes. The more detailed answer is you have a plethora of ways of going ahead and making fine-grained changes, and we have pre-existing templates of examples of changing storage classes or other Kubernetes objects and constructs.
Okay. Great. John, there's a question around, do I need to install an SDS, which I guess is software-defined storage layer on Pure to use in my container environment?
Now, with PSO, you can kind of bypass anything like that and use native storage. So there's no proprietary file system required to kind of enable this. You can just have Kubernetes, your worker nodes talk directly to the Pure Storage flash array, FlashBlade, or Cloud Block Store.
Yeah, I see. Also, there is a related question, which is, does this work with Pure as well? I think what they mean is, does it work on-prem? So I think you covered that.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, flash array on-prem, yeah, FlashBlade if you're using that as well. So it can do read write once volumes on block, and then obviously read write many on the FlashBlade for those kind of shared workloads.
And Gaurav, maybe this one for you. Can K10 export to other targets?
Yeah, so I think K10 does have, and I think when John was going through and showing some of the configurations, we do support, for example, exporting to S3 or Azure Blob. So a variety of Blob and devices. In fact, last week we even had something with MinIO as a webinar. So we do support like a variety of places we can go ahead and export the data into, and that list keeps growing.
And if you have a FlashBlade, there's an object store on there as well that they support. So if you want really fast backup and restores, you can use the FlashBlade for that.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, that was given, but absolutely.
I can take all my chances to plug as much as I can.
No, I think the best way, I think while I was looking at the question is, I think like you pointed out, John, to go ahead and install PSO, it's like a Helm command. To install K10, we kind of say, look, it's a single click or a single command installation too. So, I think you can get up and running, especially if you're already a Pure customer, getting K10 installed with less than 10 minutes. And I think that's probably the best way to get started. In addition to, I know we've got joint docs and so on.
Well, I think one more opportunity for you then, John. There's a question on, can I restore from a snapshot without having to pull data from S3?
Yes. So if it's local to that device, whether it's Cloud Block Store or the flash array, right, you can restore right from that snapshot, right? So you can say, hey, use this point in time snap instead of the object backup. And it's obviously within the array, it's a lot quicker restore.
And that's something you actually showed on the dashboard as well. As Kasten is taking the backups, it actually makes the local and the remote one visible, so you can pick and choose which one you want to use.
Exactly. Very easy.
I think that covers most of the questions we have here. So with that, I think we'll wrap up. I know there are a bunch of links here that are going to be very useful for everyone. We'll be sharing this after the webinar. And thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, John and Gaurav. It was great having you on board. And we'll wrap it up there.
Thank you, Weber. Thanks, John. This was fun.
Thank you.